And then I remember a moment when actually we've been debating what is our special recipe for our game Park Beyond. And someone said, I want to shoot people with a cannon across my park. And it sounded so stupid and so crazy at the first place. But hey, that's the idea. And this is how the impossification of Park Beyond was born. And we decided, let's go big and let's make some crazy things happening and really do whatever you like to do in Park Beyond, and only your imagination is the limit.
The impossification idea came to life very early in the development. In the beginning, we explored different directions with the team and brainstormed a lot. And I think what stuck with the team the most was the idea to allow players to build something they could not experience in real life. So something which is impossible in real life. And this is basically where impossification came from. The impossification concept actually changed a lot throughout the development. In the beginning, we started with impossifying rides, and then the team came up with more and more cool ideas. We all need to put them in the game. So you could impossify staff now, you can impossify shops, all different things you can think about. And overall, even the degree of impossification changed. In the beginning, we had mild crazy rides, but in the end, we ended up with totally out of the box, over-exaggerated attractions.
What really makes a flat ride come alive is the animation, because it really puts all this movement into a ride. So when we create one of these flat rides, the animation is therefore very crucial. We would start by collecting references and all the information we could get, for example from YouTube or other sources. Then we would create a bundle for the animator. The animator would look with us over this kind of stuff, we would make sketches and then see how we could turn this into a good base flat ride animation. Based on the base flat ride animation, we then look, okay, how can we make it more awesome for the impossified version? We look at additional information, additional ideas without any restriction. We just think, okay, let's make the best animation possible. Afterwards, we then look at the stuff we get and then think, okay, how can we make it more believable and also believable in the world we created with Park Beyond? Based on that, we create the final impossified animation for the flat ride. For me, it's the most rewarding moment when you later look at the ride in the game and you see this animation and you see how your idea and your creativity really comes alive, and this animation really pushes the ride forward and makes it also so much more awesome.
In case of the tornado wing, we thought, for example, it would be really cool to make the visitors fly in the park, and what if there is this giant tornado happening that would then whirl them around. And we tried to make this work first, so we thought, how can we make it believable? How is it actually feasible? How can we make it look the coolest? And this would then be this initial idea that we are working with.
Audio is an integral part of any game's experience, and ambient sound helps characterize the virtual world and adds to the player's immersive experience. In a game like Park Beyond, ambient sound is especially important for the feeling of being in a theme park, because it just doesn't feel the same if you cannot hear the music of the rides or the mumbling and cheering of the visitors around you. That is why in Park Beyond we have a number of different systems working together to help bring the music and the ambient sound of the game to life. And even if some of these things might not be actively noticed by all players, the Park Beyond audio team is definitely looking forward for everyone to get their hands on the game and experience it in-game to get immersed into their own theme parks. Furthermore, an important issue to consider for Park Beyond's audio is the question of scale. Because in Park Beyond we allow up to several thousands of visitors in the map at the same time. And having each one of these visitors play audio would not be possible performantly. That is why for our crowd audio We have several systems in place that analyze what is happening around the player to determine the locations and sizes, as well as the density of agent crowds, so these can be equipped with audio.
So from a producer's perspective, it was definitely a long process to get Park Beyond to life. In the early stages, there was a lot of trying and actually a lot of prototypes that we had. So we had one specific prototype only for the roller coaster editor, a prototype just to get the AI and the visitor behavior and them walking in the game world working. And then at some point, we had to get, once the vision was aligned, to get all of these different ideas into a project plan that actually makes sense and is actually achievable in the time frame that we had.
So just like with flat rides, you can impossify your coasters in Park Beyond. And when you impossify your coaster, we want to put you in the driving seat of how that will look. So you can go back in and change your coaster. And we do this by giving you an impossified hook. And this will be like a special objective that gives you a ton of stats, but will be really difficult to achieve. And there's a lot of different ones to choose from. So one of them might be get 20 inversions in your coaster. There's a lot of crazy possibilities like that. When we say coaster building in Park Beyond, the first thing that comes to mind for me is freedom. And I mean freedom in three ways. The first way is freedom in movement. The train can move forward, it can move backwards, it can split, it can go on different tracks. There's so many ways that you can make it go at any given time. There's so many combinations and possibilities, and we give you the full freedom to do it as you like. The second way that we use freedom is freedom in the environment. You can build your coaster through the environment just as you like. You can remove objects that are on the way. You can even tunnel through the terrain. We have a lot of cool scenery objects and even flat rides that you can build through and around. We have also some landmarks, even in the campaign levels, to give you like exciting, like cool and unique opportunities that you can build around. And the third way is freedom in design. And with that, I mean that you can build the coaster just like you want it. We're not gonna like correct you and say, oh, in this one corner, your G-forces are too high. No, if your coaster makes it to the end and it does a lot of exciting stuff, it's gonna be a good coaster. And it's gonna be your coaster.
Theme park games not necessarily have a strong focus on campaign, but for Park Beyond it was really important for us to tell a strong emotional campaign with interesting characters, with an interesting storyline. Because on the one hand side we can use the story for onboarding to all the complex mechanics we have in the game, and on the other hand side we have this impossification theme, and the overall theme of the game is to dream big and build the park of your dreams. And this is something we wanted to capture and tell in our story campaign as well. The mission in Park Beyond are structured in a way that they introduce new mechanics step by step. This happens in sync with introducing new characters. So we have characters who are embodying certain game mechanics or certain aspects of the game. For example, Izzy, she is in charge of the finances of the park, and every time she gets introduced or is part, finances play a big role of this particular mission. The same is a fact for Alex, for example, who is in charge of ensuring that your craziness doesn't go completely overboard, but you're still having a safe experience for the visitors. And then if he plays a major role in a mission, then this part of safety and comfort is important in this particular mission. And our missions always start with what we call the pitch meeting, which is also, I think, an interesting concept in our game.
You've seen the park and its rather special forest locale, so you appreciate the challenge facing you. I want you to pitch a plan for turning this investment into profitability.
The pitch meeting is the place for the player to actually pitch their idea on how each mission objective should be. The idea was developed because the player is actually supposed to be the visioneer on this park. So it felt a bit wrong for us to tell the player what to do in each of these missions. So we came up with the writers with this idea that we put the player in a boardroom and there are board members, all the different characters, and the player decides how to solve an obstacle in the game. So for example, there might be a park which is unclean and which is run down, and the player is pitching how to improve it by focusing on making a park especially for families, for example, or building a certain attraction which is very exciting. And it doesn't stop there in the objectives the player sets for themselves, but it also allows the player to define how much money he needs for this objective, or which research needs to be unlocked. And in this dialogue with the board members, the player now gets the opportunity to choose these different parameters and kind of build the mission objective for himself.
During the design of the pitch meeting, we came up with the idea of having a central hub that the player returns to that would reoccur throughout the campaign. That would mean that the player returns to a certain space, he will meet the characters, and he will always get briefed for the next mission. And to make this certain space more unique and also fitting to Park Beyond, we decided to include the idea of impossification in there. So that would mean that in the beginning of the game, you have this old school, dusty, gray, brownish room. And it's supposed to be this room that you see and you instantly smell it, and you really don't want to spend more time than necessary in there. But when the story progresses, this room then develops, so it starts to open up, it becomes this light, colorful space, and you can really settle in and get comfortable there and spend time with the characters.
When thinking of the art style, we thought of, okay, let's make really cool and awesome stuff. And how could we translate this into a nice style for the player? One of the things is that it shouldn't be too serious. It's a fun game. It has a lot of humor, which you actually see a lot in these pitch meetings we have in our campaign. In the pitch meetings, you see the characters close up. So the art style should actually be able to display nice characters in a very humorous way. For us, it was important to also address the next-gen quality. Therefore, the art style should allow for a lot of details in these close-ups of the pitch meeting. We actually tried several art styles until we ended up with the current art style, which we think is the most awesome art style for this type of genre and also for the humor we have in the game.
In Park Beyond, we have tons of management features and therefore a lot of complexity. So we needed to ensure from the get-go that all the different players we have, that they are getting access to the game and are actually guided through the different management features we have. Therefore, we established from the very get-go 3 different levels of complexity. The first one is about layouting gameplay. So where do you put your shops, where do you put your flat rides, and how do they synergize in terms of providing for the needs for the same target demographic. The second layer is what we call the management gameplay, where it's about hiring the right staff, hiring the right amount of staff, and tuning prices and fees for shops and flat rides and all those different items you sell in the park. And the last layer is where you can go all in crazy and micromanage your park to the fullest. This is the part where you are looking at all the different statistics and the heat maps, for example, to identify small areas of improvement in your park. So which area needs more trash bins, for example. These are the layers, and they work together in a way that players can pick and choose in which ones they want to interact with, so there's not too much complexity, especially for the beginner players.
Any theme park is not complete without the people visiting it and the staff that keeps everything running. The same is true for Park Beyond. Our visitors and staff are what make the park feel alive. But on top of that, visitors and staff are also a central part of our management gameplay. because any theme park can only be successful if visitors enjoy their time and spend money inside the park. Our visitors make their decisions depending on their wants and needs, and the game communicates that to the player to allow them to optimize their park. The role of staff is, of course, to support the player by improving the visitor's experience in the park and by making sure that all the rides and shops are kept in good condition. But on top of that, our staff also have their own needs, so the players always need to keep their well-being in mind as well to allow them to perform their duties.
Testing games and having a strong QA is important because you can have the best game, like the best design, the most immersive story, but none of this will ever reach a player if the game doesn't work like it should. And then you have to ask yourself, is something ever really fun when it's not working like it should? Because it kind of overshades everything that the team does, like the designer, the artists, the programmers. If it doesn't work and the feeling that you should have while playing is not the same as it is when playing. While some bugs may be funny, like visual glitches, most of them are just straight out frustrating because something should work, or if, for example, something in a management system isn't working and you end out being bankrupt for no apparent reason, it's just frustrating. And this also goes especially for like performance issues, because it's the worst feeling ever when you just spend hours over hours creating something, the game crashes and everything is kind of for nothing. So QA's task in that regard is also to ensure that the players can have fun and that this fun is protected in a way. And, well, let's just say at least that the team is aware for those potential risks for that fun.
Park Beyond allows up to several thousands of visitors inside a park. Therefore, anything related to the visitors, such as their rendering or their decision making, needs to be as performant as possible, which is why a lot of our effort is spent on that. An additional difficulty while implementing visitors for Park Beyond is, of course, communicating to the player how and why they make certain decisions and act in certain ways. So if, for example, visitors don't visit a certain ride, that could have several reasons. Maybe the queue is not connected, or maybe the entry fee is far too high and they don't want to pay that. The game, of course, needs to communicate that to the player so they can fix it, for example, using the visitor thoughts about this ride. Of course, this is also true for developers, because when implementing the behavior of visitors and staff inside the game, we also need information about how and why they act in certain ways. This can be especially difficult when you have several thousand visitor groups inside the park at the same time. Therefore, we implemented a number of different developer tools that allow us to retrace the behavior and decision-making of every single group inside the park. Thank you all for watching. I can't wait for everyone to play Park Beyond.